When you go to a hospital and get an x-ray, the expectation is absolute clarity. Like it's a very sterile clinical process.
Right, you want the doctor to put that film up on the light box and point to a specific spot.
Exactly. Give me a clean, easily understandable diagnosis. Like, here's the break and here's the fix.
Right.
And honestly, I feel like we treat our media consumption, and especially our music, the exact same way. You put on a playlist because you want a clean, predictable, emotional fix.
Oh, absolutely.
You want like a groove to walk to, a catchy melody to hum, just something your brain could easily digest and anticipate, you know?
Well, it makes complete biological sense, really. We are neurologically wired to seek out patterns that resolve.
Yeah.
When a chord progression lands right where we expect it to, our brains reward us. I mean, we like harmony because it just feels safe and orderly.
Right. The chorus hits, the tension drops, and you get that neat little dopamine release. But then you encounter a piece of art where the entire objective is to completely deny you that safety. Like where the goal is to intentionally induce the feeling of a literal medical emergency.
Which is definitely a choice.
It really is. And that is exactly what brought us to today's source material. We are looking at a fascinating column from the MMR column that's Monumental Movement Records, dated April 10th, 2026.
Yes.
It chronicles this mysterious, highly experimental rock duo from Canada called Angine de Poitrine. And for anyone who hasn't, brushed up on their medical French recently, that literally translates to angina pectoris.
Meaning chest pain.
Right.
Specifically, it's that terrifying crushing pressure you feel when your heart muscle isn't receiving enough oxygen-rich blood.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because right out of the gate, we are hit with these massive contradictions.
Oh, yeah.
We have a band deliberately naming themselves after a severe cardiac event. They play this incredibly complex, mathematically precise rock music. And to top it all off, they perform wearing these claustrophobic, full-head masks, completely obliterating any sense of who they actually are.
And, setting the stage here, this deep dive is about far more than just a band's biography.
Yeah, definitely.
We're using this MMR column to explore how a group can take anonymity, geographical isolation, and pure, unadulterated musical tension, and really engineer them into a profoundly visceral experience for you, the listener.
It's intense.
It really is. It's an exploration of what happens when you just strip away every single comfort and expectation we have about a musical performance.
I was looking at the photos included in the MMR piece, and I couldn't get past the masks.
They're striking, for sure.
They are. And it feels almost entirely counterintuitive to how art works today. I mean, we live in an era of constant self-promotion, right? TikTok dances, relentless personal branding.
Yeah, it's all about the face.
Exactly. So why would you completely erase your face when you are actively trying to build an audience?
Well, the column notes that the masks actually started as a bit of a joke.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was just a casual visual gag between the two members who go by the pseudonyms Angine de Poitrine and Quebec de Poitrine.
Okay, love the pseudonyms.
Right. But it quickly evolved into this philosophical cornerstone of their work. What's fascinating here is the psychological shift this creates.
How so?
Well, in modern music, the frontman or the personality of the artist is usually the primary anchor. We connect with a face, a specific attitude, a human ego.
Right. And when you remove that anchor, you kind of leave the audience adrift. The best analogy I could think of to describe this to someone is eating at one of those dine-in-the-dark restaurants. Have you heard of those?
Oh, yeah, where it's totally pitch black.
Exactly. You walk in, you can't see the table, you can't see the waiter, and you definitely have no idea what the food looks like.
Right. And by completely starving your visual cortex like that, your brain just desperately reroutes that energy to your remaining senses.
Yes.
Your sense of taste and smell just go into absolute overdrive to compensate for all that missing data.
That is exactly what I felt reading about their live shows. By completely removing the visual cue of a facial expression there is no lead singer grimacing emotionally during a solo.
No bassist smiling reassuringly at the front row.
Exactly. Your auditory senses are just forced to carry the entire weight of the experience. The audience isn't watching a rock star emote. They are just consuming the raw sound.
And the MMR author points out that this eliminates the rock star ego entirely. The mask effectively functions as a blank screen.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, so instead of passively watching a performer act out tension or aggression for you, the audience is forced to project their own internal tension onto that blank slate.
Wow.
The question fundamentally changes from who is playing this music to what is actually ringing out or what is happening to me while I listen to it.
It's such a radical shift in perspective.
Right.
But I mean, making music that deliberately functions as a panic attack while wearing bags on your heads, that doesn't just happen by accident in a garage in Los Angeles or
Yeah,
Nashville.
absolutely.
You don't get away with that in a heavy industry town without some A&R executive knocking on the door telling you to take the masks off and write a catchy pop hook.
Right. Art this uncompromising requires a very specific cultural soil to take root in. And the geography of this band is crucial to understanding their sound.
Okay, tell me about that.
They hail from Saguenay, Quebec. And Quebec, as a province, represents a deeply rooted, fiercely protected, French-speaking cultural sphere right in the middle of North America.
Right.
The MMR piece emphasizes that this local scene heavily favors raw artistry and experimentation over commercial viability.
I get that Quebec has a unique cultural bubble. Like, the Francophone identity is incredibly strong there. But I have to push back a little here.
Go for it.
Is the geography actually changing the physical structure of the sound they produce? Or is it more practical? Like, are they simply geographically isolated enough in a place like Saguenay to just get weird in a basement without the pressure of the mainstream American music industry breathing down their necks?
It is really tempting to view it just as practical isolation, but the linguistic and cultural environment genuinely alters the creative output.
Really?
Yeah, Quebec is essentially a French cultural island surrounded by a massive ocean of English-speaking media. When your everyday reality involves constantly navigating a defined cultural boundary, your art naturally begins to explore and often challenge boundaries of all kinds.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So the language barrier isn't just a hurdle. It functions almost like a protective incubator for musical experimentation.
Precisely. I mean, think about the dominant English-speaking rock tradition. It is heavily rooted in blues, in straightforward storytelling, and in commercial accessibility.
Yeah, you want a chorus people can sing along to in a stadium.
Exactly. But the Quebecois experimental scene isn't trying to write the next massive radio hit for a broad American audience. They prioritize structure over storytelling. They allow language and pure abstraction to coexist.
Okay, I see.
Because they are untethered from the commercial expectations of mainstream Anglo rock, they effectively translate their region's cultural boundaries directly into the architecture of their music.
So if their hometown provided the cultural permission slip to completely dismantle musical structure, we need to talk about what that dismantled structure actually sounds like.
Oh, definitely.
Because this is where the genius of the band really shines through the chaos. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The MMR column describes their music as being rooted in math rock, but layered heavily with microtones.
We should probably define what math rock is for anyone listening who hasn't encountered it, because it is the foundation of everything they do.
Right, good call. To give a quick jargon-free overview, standard rock music is like walking in a straight line on a flat sidewalk. You have a steady 4/4 beat.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Exactly. It's totally predictable, and you can nod your head to it without thinking. Math rock takes that sidewalk and turns it into a complex obstacle course.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
It uses atypical rhythmic structures, like a 7/8 or 11/8 time signature. It starts and stops unpredictably, requiring the precision of a mathematical equation just to play it together.
It demands an incredible amount of technical proficiency, but Angine de Poitrine takes that complex math rock foundation and just injects it with microtones, polyrhythms, and non-standard tuning.
Which sounds completely unhinged.
It is. The article describes their resulting sound as a structure of simultaneous regularity and collapse.
Simultaneous regularity and collapse. That is such a vivid phrase.
It really is.
I was trying to figure out how to explain polyrhythms and complex meters without making us sound like we're reading a music theory textbook.
Always a challenge.
So imagine you are walking down a long staircase in the pitch dark. You've established the rhythm of your steps, your brain has calculated the distance, and you are totally confident there is one more step at the very bottom.
But there isn't.
Right, there isn't. Your foot just hits flat ground early. You know that horrifying split-second stomach drop? That jolt of adrenaline and panic?
Oh, yeah. It is a sudden physical loss of your spatial equilibrium.
That stomach drop is exactly the feeling their rhythm section is hunting for. By establishing a complex pattern just long enough for your brain to finally trust it, they can effectively pull the floor out from under you over and over again.
The analogy holds up beautifully because it really gets to the why of their musical choices.
Yeah.
The music is actively hostile to comfort. Like, let's look at the microtones the column mentions.
Yeah.
Most Western music is built on a 12-tone equal temperament system. Think of the standard white and black keys on a piano.
Right. The typical notes we all know.
Right. Your brain has been conditioned since birth to understand the exact distance between a C and a C sharp. But microtones exist in the infinite spaces between those standard, culturally accepted notes.
The forbidden frequencies.
Exactly. To a listener raised on Western music, a microtone intuitively sounds out of tune. It registers as a mistake.
Because we're not used to it.
Exactly. It creates immediate psychological friction because your brain is desperately trying to round the note up or down to something recognizable, and it just can't.
And to achieve this, Angine de Poitrine literally had to invent new hardware.
Yeah, the custom guitar.
Right. The source notes, they play a custom-made double-neck guitar just to expand their structural capabilities. Usually when you see a double-neck guitar like Jimmy Page playing Stairway to Heaven, it's so the guitarist can switch between a standard 6-string and a 12-string neck for different textures.
But Canon is using it as an instrument of destabilization. One neck can hold standard tuning, while the other is fretted or tuned specifically for these microtonal intervals. They can jump between the comforting 12-tone scale and the anxiety-inducing microtones in a fraction of a second.
So when you combine the unpredictable staircase of their math rock rhythms with the out-of-tune friction of microtones, these are no longer just quirky, avant-garde musical choices.
No, not at all.
They are literal, physical tools engineered to create the angina that their name promises.
Yeah.
The tension isn't just a byproduct of the music. The tension is the entire point.
They're exploring instability as a valid aesthetic experience.
Which is brilliant on an artistic level. But, let's be honest, making music that intentionally gives people auditory whiplash, naming your band after cardiac chest pain, and wearing bags on your heads, I mean, this is the furthest thing imaginable from a recipe for mainstream success.
On paper, it's a terrible business model.
Right. By all traditional metrics of the music industry, this project should never have left that basement in Saguenay. Yet we are talking about them because they completely exploded onto the global stage.
The timeline detailed in the MMR column outlines an incredibly slow, deliberate burn that suddenly caught fire.
It's a wild trajectory. The source points out that these two musicians actually started playing together back in the 2010s.
Just tinkering around?
Yeah, they spent years doing foundational work, essentially treating their sound like a private, obsessive science experiment. They didn't even officially form the duo under the name Angine de Poitrine until 2019.
And even after putting a name to the project, they remained largely dormant. It wasn't until 2023 that they began continuous, regular activity as a performing entity.
Right, they released their debut album, Volume 1, in 2024. But the undeniable massive turning point happened just recently in 2026.
The KEXP session.
Exactly. They did a live in-studio performance on the KEXP radio station, and that video went massively viral online.
Yeah.
That single isolated event acted as a global catalyst.
It really did.
It led to international tours across Europe and North America, culminating in a 2026 appearance at Japan's legendary Fuji Rock Festival.
I mean, from the deep francophone underground of regional Quebec to playing one of the most prestigious, massive festival stages in all of Asia.
It's incredible. But here is the central paradox for me. How does a band that refuses to play by a single rule of commercial music make that massive leap? What does this tell us about how art and music actually spread today?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really highlights a massive structural shift in music distribution.
Okay, tell me more.
For decades, the conventional wisdom dictated by record labels was that to reach a global audience, you had to aggressively smooth out your rough edges. You had to make your art easily digestible for the masses.
Yeah, you had to have a recognizable face, a media-friendly brand, and a chorus that could play in a supermarket.
The ultimate commercial compromise. You sand down the art until it fits the distribution pipe.
But Angine de Poitrine proves that the pipe has changed.
Absolutely. Underground, hyper-local, abrasive art does not have to dilute its weirdness to find a massive audience anymore. The internet age has made the boundaries between the underground and mainstream festival culture incredibly porous.
So true.
A single online catalyst, like a KEXP performance being shared, dissected, and pushed by the YouTube algorithm, can instantly connect a highly niche, geographically isolated experiment to a global context.
Because the internet allows the exact right people to find it no matter what continent they live on.
Exactly. The infrastructure of the modern internet means that pure, unapologetic experimentation can bypass the traditional gatekeepers entirely. You don't need to convince a radio executive in New York to understand microtones.
Right, thank goodness.
You just need the video of your performance to reach the specific decentralized subset of listeners around the world who are actively craving that exact type of auditory tension.
I think that is incredibly encouraging for anyone listening to this right now. As a consumer of art, it proves that pure, uncompromising creativity can still locate its exact audience globally without sacrificing a single ounce of its core identity.
They didn't change a thing.
No.
Yeah.
They didn't take off the masks for KEXP. They didn't tune their guitars to a standard pop scale for Fuji Rock. They stood their ground and forced the entire world to meet them on their own highly uncomfortable terms.
And the world eagerly showed up.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, the MMR source argues, tension and instability are profoundly shared human experiences. The music acts as a vessel for something we all feel constantly, but rarely have a dedicated, safe space to actually process.
Which brings us full circle on the journey we've mapped out today. We started with two musicians in Saguenay, Quebec, choosing to treat their own identities as a complete blank slate by wearing full head masks.
Yep.
They used the cultural isolation of their francophone hometown to insulate themselves, giving them the freedom to completely shatter the rules of rhythm and pitch.
They engineered a sound built entirely on simultaneous regularity and collapse.
And by stubbornly refusing to compromise that terrifying sound, they bypassed the traditional industry gatekeepers to bring a shared, visceral experience of tension to global festival stages.
It's a huge achievement.
It really forces you to rethink that X-ray analogy we started with. Like, we constantly demand the clean break. We want the easy answer, the comfortable diagnosis, the pop song that tells us everything is going to be okay in a neat 4/4 time signature.
Right.
But the reality is the human experience is inherently messy. It is incredibly tense. It is polyrhythmic.
Our own hearts don't always beat in a perfect, predictable rhythm. Angine de Poitrine proves that tension and instability aren't just negative emotions that we need to constantly medicate or avoid.
Yeah.
When engineered with intention, they are profound experiences that can actually connect us deeply to one another.
And that leaves you with something really fascinating to ponder as you step back into your day. In a world where we are constantly told to seek out whatever is most comfortable, to consume easy, algorithmically smoothed out content, and to aggressively brand our own identities for public consumption, is putting on a mask, stepping into the dark, and embracing pure, unadulterated tension actually the most authentic thing we can do.
Wow. It is a question that definitely lingers long after the music stops.
It really does. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep listening closely, keep questioning the structures around you, and we'll catch you on the next one.